Shop Black Friday deals now.
A new NCIS Sydney, Tuesday, 8/7 Central on CBS.
The Valley is heating up, and so are your Phoenix Suns.
Nice release up ahead to Naz, who slams it home.
Basketball is back. Catch Suns versus Knicks. Sunday, November 26th at 4 p.m.
On the right baseline, backs him down. Booker spinning to his right, fading, knocks it down, count that baby, and the foul. It's the deuce and the damage for D-Book.
Tune in live on Arizona's Family. Phoenix Suns basketball, coming in hot.
There's never been a better time to get away with a great deal on the Hyundai you've always wanted. Plus America's best warranty and up to 3 years complimentary maintenance. It's your journey. Own every mile at the Hyundai Getaway Sales Event. Now's the time to get in and get away.
Get 0% APR for 60 months, plus 0 payments for 90 days, or $2,500 bonus cash on the Hyundai Tucson. See your Valley Hyundai dealer.
We're standing up for our right to be lazy. We work hard. We deserve to scroll hard.
It's the Black Friday sale. Save 25% store-wide. Lazy Boy. Long live the lazy.
I'm Doug Hopkins, and I still want to buy your house. The Valley real estate market is changing quickly, and prices are falling fast. Thousands of homeowners who thought their homes were sold are having those contracts canceled by fly-by-night investors. This is not how I do business. When I sign a contract with you, it's a done deal. I'll put up $5,000 to guarantee that I will not change the price or cancel the contract. Sell your house for a fair price with peace of mind that the deal is done. DougHopkins.com, certainty in an uncertain time.
When you're able to connect your finances and your gifts of giving and time and talent, it really helps fulfill my desire to be part of a greater good.
You're watching Arizona's Family CBS 5, home of Super Bowl 58.
Coach, you said the biggest thing you wanted to see from your team at the beginning of the game was intensity. What do you make of your performance in the first quarter?
Yeah, so far I think our guys are playing with the right intensity. Obviously, great job forcing a turnover on our defense. You know, offensively, we got to finish these drives.
Coach, thank you.
MIC.
That was Amanda moments ago, and he's referencing a trip into the red zone that didn't come away with 6. Instead, a field goal. Still 10-0. Missouri on top. Jacoby Criswell, the quarterback right now for Arkansas. Throws his first pass, wings it out. That's Augusta, and Augusta is immediately dropped. It's great pursuit. Tristan Newson out there. You've got an inexperienced quarterback, and you've got an inexperienced offensive coordinator. Kenny Guyton is the interim OC.
Yeah, when Dan Enos got fired, Sam Pittman knew right away that he wanted to keep as much continuity if he could, so he gave the reins to Kenny Guyton, who didn't have any experience as a play caller, and they've been 2-1 overall and 1-1 in the SEC since Guyton started calling plays.
And they blitz him again and hit him. A flag is down in the defensive backfield. Chuck Hicks, one of the linebackers, got a piece of Criswell, but the flag sits up the field at the 27.
Personal foul, face mask, defense, number 3. 15-yard penalty from the previous spot. Automatic first down.
That's the first down for Arkansas.
I was going to say, that's a critical one, and penalties have been a problem for Missouri in critical downs as well. And when you extend the chains on 3rd down, even though you got pressure there, those are the things that drive head coaches crazy. We saw in
some of those decisions on fourth down. Dan Lanning was super aggressive on the road in Corvallis. They had a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter, and Oregon State came back and won that game and knocked the Ducks out of the Pac-12 championship game. Oregon comes into this matchup with the number 2 scoring offense in the country. Bo Nix, right now, as far as betting favorites go, is the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Can't argue with that, the way that he's playing. I know Penix is going to have his shot, and if he remains undefeated, I would still bet that he would win if he's able to remain undefeated. But Nix and Oregon, they're going to be awfully tough to beat. Awfully tough to beat. I think it's a worse matchup for Oregon State, actually, than last week's matchup against Washington. See, against Washington, you can limit possessions. You can run the football. They had the rain. They were at home. Like, the Beavers had a better chance to beat Washington than I think they're going to have to beat Oregon. Nix is starting his record 59th career game. He's playing at a level that he's never played before, an incredibly high level. He's completing 78% of his passes, which, by the way, if he's able to continue that mark or even elevate it, that would set an FBS record. That was held by Mac Jones, by the way, 77.4 in the COVID year. Oregon's run defense for this matchup against a team that wants to run the football is excellent. Oregon's defensive line doesn't get the credit that they deserve. They're excellent. They're stout. They can rush the passer. They're 11th in the country stopping the run. Oregon State is tough to beat, all right? And I don't care where it's going to be. I don't care if the matchup is bad. They've lost 3 games this season by a combined 8 points, all right? Jonathan Smith has done an unbelievable job at Oregon State. He should be up for jobs all over the country. If I was Texas A&M, that would be the first call I would make is Jonathan Smith. They lost by 3 at Wazoo early in the year, 3 to Arizona on the road, and by 2 to Washington, right? So 13.5 is a big number Oregon is favored, even being at home. I do think it's going to be fascinating, though, watching DJ Uiagalelei face his younger brother, Mateo, who's a defensive lineman for Oregon. Dan Lanning was asked, like, did you have any words of advice for your brother? Or excuse me, for Mateo playing his brother on Saturday. And Dan was like, yeah, hit him. Which is music to any younger brother's ears. I'm a younger brother, and you asked me to hit my brother. I'm like, I'm all in. DJ threw a couple of picks last week against Washington, but it's really going to be about their ability to protect him from that pass rush, which is really good. And Mateo Uiagalelei is part of that. If I had to make a prediction, I think Oregon wins this game, but Oregon State just doesn't get beat by 13.5 generally. So I would probably bet Oregon State, but take Oregon if I was just trying to pick an outright winner. Thank you for watching the Joel Klass Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel, and you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage. Let's get into it. CFP rankings. Washington, let's start with that. Washington moves into the top 4. So really no change up at the top. Georgia's up there. Ohio State's up there. Michigan is up there. We knew that they would stay there. What we didn't know, though, is what was going to happen with Florida State after the Jordan Travis injury and what was going to happen with Washington after another impressive win. I talked about this on Monday, and I still firmly believe this. I believe that if any team in the SEC in particular, but if any team, even in the Big Ten or in other conferences, but Big Ten and mainly the SEC, if any of those teams that were really good, that was vying for a spot in the playoff, that was an undefeated, that was, favorable, Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, if they would have gone into the 11th ranked team in the country and gone on the road to face the 11th ranked team, if this team was a pass first offense and it was raining, if that 11th ranked team had won 16 of the last 17 games in their building, and the only game that they lost was to a historically great Heisman Trophy winner, then that win would have carried more weight. We would have been singing, like I said on Monday, the praises of Washington from on high, and rightly so. And that team is, I got to tell you, like, I just continue to be impressed with Washington. I continue to see a team that, even though they might be a bit one-dimensional at times, they win with toughness. They've run it well when they've needed to. They have defended when they've needed to. I am reminded of that game, a weird one, way back in the regular season, middle of the regular season, I should say, against Arizona State when they needed a pick six. Couldn't do anything offensively, and they needed a pick six. So here they are, 11-0. Their best wins are now Oregon State on the road. That's the one I was talking about from last week. They have beaten Oregon. They have beaten Arizona. That's a hell of a resume. And you can make the argument it's a better resume than Michigan. It's a better resume than Georgia. If you actually look at what Washington has done, they've got the number one strength of record in America. Okay, so no team has a better strength of record. And when you look at their strength of schedule, 35th, it's actually the toughest strength of schedule, the best strength of schedule of any of the top 6 teams in the country. So they not only have excellent wins, including a team in Oregon that everybody believes is a top 6-7 team, but they also have played, in terms of its width and depth, a better and tougher schedule than anybody else in the top 6. So you can make a strong argument that Washington, even at 4, is underrated. You know, Michigan doesn't have the resume that Washington does. Now, has Michigan been consistent and dominant over the course of the year? Yeah, they have. And Washington continued to win games by 1 score and within 1 score. And so they're at 4. But listen, I've argued and did on Monday that this team should be in the top 4. Now they are. I believe that the committee did the right thing there with Washington. But that means that, unfortunately, Florida State had to move out. Now, Florida State's resume is not as strong as Washington's resume, okay? Florida State's strength of record is number 4 in America. Their strength of schedule is 62nd, all right? It's not as strong as Washington. This was a no-brainer, and I don't think that there was any real talk in that room, in the committee room. I don't think there was any real discussion about changing the top 3. Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan, I believe, were totally solidified. Even if the resumes, in particular in the Georgia case and in the Michigan case, don't measure up to what Washington brings to the table, I don't think that Washington ever was in the discussion for the 3 spot. I believe that the discussion was between 4 and 5. And when you're having a discussion between Washington's resume and Florida State's resume, then it's really not in question. Washington has the better resume, and they got the nod, and they are in the 4 spot, and rightly so. Rightly so. I'm still torn up for Jordan Travis. Gosh, man. Kid deserves better than that. It sucks. It really sucks. Now, having said that, Florida State still has a path. They still have a chance. Just like in 2014, Ohio State still had a chance and still had a path when JT Barrett went down late in that season. If you remember, the catalyst to Ohio State being included in that first playoff was their dominant win over Wisconsin. Now, that was in a conference championship game, in the Big Ten championship game. I believe that this week is a huge week for Florida State. And it's a huge week because, as you're going to see, Florida is littered all over this college football playoff rankings. They have a hand in so many spots on this ranking that we see. And to be quite candid with you, like, there's not a ton of consistency, but a Florida team that is not very good, other teams that are not ranked have handled them, namely Utah. We'll get to that in a little bit. I just think Florida State's got to go handle Florida. If they do that, then I think that there's a chance that even the injury is going to be overlooked. And remember, the committee is supposed to look at injuries. You might not like that, but that's part of what they look at. And so Florida State moves to 5. Hard to argue with that. So that's the top of the playoff rankings. Now we get to the more interesting part, because the more interesting part for me is going to be the recipe and the books, if you will, and the back end for what could be a giant debate in a couple of weeks. So there's the top 25 if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to this program, you'll know that Georgia's 1, Ohio State's 2, Michigan's 3, Washington 4, Florida State 5, and then it goes Oregon, Texas, Alabama. Then at 9, it's Missouri, 10, it's Louisville, Penn State is 11, then Ole Miss, Oklahoma, so on and so on and so on. Okay, now, let's just for a moment, before I get into my issues with some of the places that teams are ranked, let me just tell you like why it matters. Okay. In 2 weeks, there's a chance that we get an undefeated Big Ten team, potentially an undefeated Florida State team, okay, which let's just say those two would be in particular, if the following happens. Oregon beats Washington. Bama beats Georgia. Texas wins out, and then there would be a loser of this week's game, Ohio State and Michigan. That would be 6 really good one-loss teams. All right, 3 of those teams would be a conference champion. That would be Oregon, Alabama, and Texas. Now, you have to take, of those 6, 2 teams to the playoff in this scenario. Now it starts to really matter, and I'm talking about really matter, what those teams' resume look like. It starts to really matter who they beat, when they beat them, what their rank is, how the committee views that team that day. And we're starting to see the way that the committee views some of these teams that will be intricate to the back end of these resumes if these 6 teams all have 1 loss. That's why I'm interested in this. This is why I care what happens after 6. You see, the TV show, and even we do this, by the way, even on YouTube. Like when we give it, it's like we just put up the top 6. It's like, here's the 4, and then here's the first 2 that are out. And everyone's like, well, do you agree? Do you not agree? Oh, what do you think? This resume, that resume. And I just did it for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, whatever it was. But it lulls us in because the books, how you got there, how you got to the top 4 happens from 7 to 25. Okay. There are 5 teams that I think are pivotal in terms of the way the committee views them and how they rank them when it comes to these 6 teams up top. Here's the 5 teams that I think are pivotal moving forward: Missouri, Penn State, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Utah. And the reason is because those teams end up being or could be either quality or the best win for any of those teams that have 1 loss. So then it becomes imperative that for you, if you're trying to use one of those 5 teams, that the committee views that team properly. Okay? And now you get where I'm headed, which is Missouri is overranked. Penn State's probably a little overranked as it relates to Oklahoma. Tennessee, what are we doing with Tennessee? Still in the top 25, and Utah is nowhere to be found. That's going to be huge if we get down to a point where we're starting to debate between Oregon, Washington, Bama, Georgia, Texas, and the loser of Ohio State, Michigan, all as 1-loss teams, 3 of them with championships. 2 of them have to go. 6 of them have to stay at home. And all of a sudden, we're sitting here with Tennessee still ranked number 21. What are we doing? Was this an oversight? Did you quit? Committee, like, did you take a break and someone slide Tennessee in there and then no one caught it? You cannot be serious. Tennessee at 21? Tennessee is awful. Tennessee hasn't played well against one quality opponent all year. In fact, if you look at their only good opponents that they've faced, their quality opponents, their last 10 quarters against quality opponents, they've been outscored by 84 points. 84. It's wild to me. The last 2, they've lost by 57. And here's Tennessee still in the top 25. Meanwhile, Utah is nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. Can we just for a moment, did no one bring up Florida? There's the Gators. I told you they would come back. And here's Florida. And Florida makes their return. Why? Because they're not very good. They went to Utah early in the season, got beat by 13. Oh, but wait, Wait a second. That 13 number looks familiar, Joel. You're right. Aha. Aha. Guess why? Tennessee got beat by Florida by 13. That's a 26-point swing. What are we doing? What are we doing? Who are the people in the room that see that list and they think to themselves like, that's it. That's the one. Go ahead. Deliver that. That's the hotness. Just maddening. It is just maddening to like be in the sport, cover it. I do this for a living. I'm not an administrator that also worries about basketball and softball and lacrosse and water polo and all the other sports. Okay. I'm not worrying about NCAA investigations in my school. I'm not worried about anything else. This is all I do. This is all I do. And yet, we're going to have 12 yahoos in there that have all this other responsibility who are also financially tied to the college football playoff. And we're going to have them give us a top 25. Come on. Can we please, can we just stop with the charade? Can we stop? I'm going to get a headache. Okay. So Tennessee is ranked 21. As you can tell, like that's a joke. They lost to Florida by 13. They lost to Alabama by 14, but got outscored by 27 in the second half. So basically, Tennessee is getting credit. They are getting credit for playing one quality half against Alabama. That's what they're doing. Okay. Do you remember like being in high school or college and you would be like with your group of friends and then you would be like, hey, like let's call up that group of girls and let's all go hang out. And generally speaking, like, let's just say it this way. I think Tennessee is getting a bump in attractiveness by hanging out with very attractive teams. You know what I'm saying? Kind of get where I'm going with that? So it's like, good for you, Tennessee. You played really good teams and you didn't do it very well, but we're going to just rank you even though that happened. Meanwhile, Utah, who beat Florida by 13, while Tennessee lost by 13, they also can sit there and they can say, well, we've got better wins than any of the wins that Tennessee has. They beat UCLA and USC. Tennessee's best win is Kentucky, I guess, maybe A&M by 7. I mean, A&M, we're talking about A&M being your best win. A&M fired their coach, if you're not mistaken. And by the way, A&M hasn't won a road game in like 2 years. See, that's happening again. I'm going to get a headache. Again. So that's one. And that matters. OU has a better win than either Missouri or Penn State. If you look at their losses, they're all close. Penn State, their best win is Iowa. I think Missouri's best win is probably Kansas State. And it's like they're getting credit because they lost to LSU and Georgia. It's like anyone that gets to play Georgia, you step on the field with Georgia, you get a bump. The committee's like, well done. You guys played Georgia. Not well. Just played them. Way to go. Even though you didn't actually schedule them, the league did for you. But you know what? Well done. Well, you had to line up against Georgia. You should probably be ranked 21. So Missouri, Penn State, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Utah. It matters. Why? Because there's a scenario where we've got 6 one-loss teams all vying for 2 spots, and then it's going to come down to resume. It's going to come down to who you beat. Who's your best win? Who's not your best win? Does Georgia get in that sense? Well, everyone's going to be saying like, well, they beat Missouri. Does Texas get in at that point? What if they were to avenge a loss to Oklahoma? If Oklahoma were to get back into the Big 12 championship game? Well, then Oklahoma just gets another loss, probably gets moved down, and Missouri gets moved up, even though they didn't qualify for a conference championship game. It's broken. We need more committees. We need more people. We need more variables into this equation because this doesn't work. I'm just saying. I've said it, I don't know how many times, but I digress. Thank you for watching the Joel Klatt Show YouTube channel. And if you liked this clip, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And you can stay up to date on all of my college football coverage.
You know, like I told the guys on Sunday, we've been preparing for this moment all year. And so now we just need to continue on the routines that we've been on and, be the best team we've been all season.
All right, well, here we're going to find out. Are they ready? We will find out in just a few hours or a couple days. I mean, depending on when you're listening to our show, that game might be just a couple minutes away. Welcome to Always College Football. We appreciate you coming to us. I view today, I'm taping this on Tuesday night. Full disclosure, you guys are part of the trust tree, so don't tell anybody. But I'm taping this on Tuesday night. We're going to put the show out on Wednesday. We're about to embark on my favorite sequence of days on the football calendar. I love what we have on Thursday with the NFL, and then we have the Egg Bowl. I love that now Black Friday has become a huge day for matchups that we have to look forward to, like Oregon State and Oregon. That being on Black Friday is going to be amazing. We have Texas Tech and Texas on Friday. That's going to be incredible as well. And then, because that's the appetizer, we move into a full slate of Saturday action, like the Iron Bowl, Ohio State and Michigan in the game. So many different Big 12 conference championship game scenarios that we need to break down. Georgia and Georgia Tech. Georgia's going on the road. Florida State, a top 5 team on the road at Florida. We're going to break down all of these games to the best of our ability. We're going to break down the Apple Cup and why I think these teams are crazy similar in a lot of different areas. So there's a lot of breakdowns that we need to get to, but we also, because it's a Wednesday show, we need to break down the college football playoff rankings from last night. Here's what I think they got right. Here's what they got wrong. Here's how I think they're trying to justify it. Here's why the move was pretty significant and why there's really not a whole lot that you can do if you're Texas and Alabama, at least at the moment. So we'll break all of that down here on a Wednesday edition, a special edition, holiday edition of Always College Football. So let's kick it off with some rankings reaction. College Football Committee rankings breakdown. We do it here every single Wednesday. This week will be no different. I'm fresh off the set, just finished up the show. Couple takeaways that I think are of significance. Let's start at number 1. Georgia is at number 1. Nothing to really talk about there, nothing to really break down. I'd love to try to let's make an argument on behalf of some. No, I mean, Georgia's won. It makes perfect sense. Number 2 is where I think it begins to get a little bit interesting. Not that I have anything against Ohio State. I don't. But I thought Joey brought up a really interesting point today in assessing, well, why doesn't Washington, if their resume is so strong, why don't they jump up over Michigan? Which I think we should maybe push back just one step further. Well, if their resume is so strong, why don't we just put them ahead of Ohio State? Because if we're going off of resume, Washington has had for a while arguably the second best resume, or at least in the mix, especially with the addition of the win against Oregon State. That was a really good win on the road. They've now run a gauntlet and have faced multiple ranked teams in the last handful of weeks. Arizona win is looking better and better. So they have 3 wins. If you look at what Washington's accomplished, Washington has beaten 3 teams that are currently ranked in the top 16.
Oregon is on the cusp of clinching a spot in the Pac-12 championship game and building its case further to make the playoffs. But Oregon State trying to play spoiler. Angie Machado and Matt Preem are here to break down this Pac-12 rivalry game. The Ducks looking for revenge after the Beavers' comeback victory in Corvallis last year that knocked Oregon out of the Pac-12 title game. Dan Lanning said that 38-34 loss still resonates with the team, going so far as to call the rematch their Super Bowl. So one of the biggest matchups in the 127-year history of this series. Hopefully not the last, as Oregon leaves for the Big Ten. But Angie, what does this game mean to the players if it is the last?
Yeah, it's always a big game. It's for the state of Oregon, and Oregon State. It's been for bragging rights, whether the Ducks have been good or bad, and the Beavers have been good or bad. It's always been kind of that last bragging rights. Families are divided. There's Beavers and Ducks on family sides, and this is a big one just for, it could be the last. I'm hearing it may not be, but at least it's the last in the Pac-12 as we know it. So I think there's some feelings of we need to go out and get one last win, but it's going to be a tough one for sure.
Yeah, Oregon on the flip side, they're very upset with how that game ended last season. I think Oregon State ran like 27 straight run plays against the Ducks in the second half. Today, Brandon Dorless, Oregon star defensive lineman, said It's an embarrassing showing on tape for their defensive line coach, Tony Tuioti, for themselves. The players walked into the facility this week, and that fourth quarter is on loop. Players have joked that they've tried to change the channel, and they can't. It's on every single channel in the HDC. Oregon wants to play this game moving forward. When they moved to the Big Ten, Dan Lanning told me that it's an important game for the state. Oregon's making efforts with other games that they've got scheduled for 24 to try and get Oregon State on the schedule. But for now, it's the last time we may see this. Hopefully it's not the last, and it's one that means a lot for both fan bases in the state. As Angie said, there's houses divided in the state of Oregon this week.
Oregon's offense scoring over 46 points a game. That's the second most in the nation, with Bo Nix leading the way. He's been a Heisman favorite all year, and really cool stat for him here. He's on pace to set the FBS record for completion percentage in a season. But that Beavers defense is no joke. So, Matt, how do you see the matchup going on this side of the ball?
Yeah, Oregon's kind of changed their offense the last couple of weeks. We're seeing a lot more vertical and horizontal throws by Bo Nix. He's taking more shots, stretching the field. And it's going to be a test against an Oregon State secondary. That's one of the better ones in the conference. But Oregon's receivers, now their tight ends, have started to make plays. We've seen multiple guys have career days through the air receiving, and that's going to be the big question. Can Oregon State stop the speed and the skill sets that they have at the receiver position, headlined by Troy Franklin, who became the school's all-time leader in receiving yards and touchdowns in a single season this past week?
Yeah, I think Oregon State's defense is really going to need to step up. It's a younger secondary unit, which we really thought the front seven would be the key to this. And I still see that, because I think if Oregon State's going to have some success against Bo Nix in the passing attack, they're going to need to pressure Bo Nix as much as they can. And I realize that Oregon offensive line is not giving up many sacks. I know it's going to be a tough challenge, but if they can try to pressure him a little bit, force him maybe into a bad decision or two. This is an Oregon State defense that has more sacks than they did last season for all 13 games combined. They are getting some pressure, and they've also got some takeaways in there as well. So look for some pressure, and then look for Oregon State to be opportunistic on the takeaway game.
Now, the ground game for both teams will be strength on strength. Teams ranking top 10 in their running game, over 5 yards a carry. Both defenses also ranking top 20 against the run. But Angie, Oregon State does favor running the ball a bit more. So how important is the Beavers' ground game in this matchup?
It's huge, and it's huge for a couple reasons. First, that is Oregon State's strength. Their offensive line is built to run block. They are a really solid run blocking team first. Damian Martinez is one of the top backs in the conference, if not the country. He's a Doak Walker semifinalist. This is a team that's going to look to run the ball, but it's important too because you want to keep the ball out of Bo Nix's hands. Last week against Washington, Oregon State controlled the clock to the tune of 38 minutes to 22 minutes in that 2-point loss to the Huskies. So this is going to be a main point of emphasis for Oregon State, whether that is Damian Martinez, the second back, Deshaun Fenwick, or even DJ Uiagalelei, who can move the ball as well with his feet.
Yeah, this is like strength on strength, as you said. Oregon knows 268 yards last season to the Beavers on the ground was unacceptable. They know that Damian Martinez is one of the best backs, not only in the conference, but nationally. He does not get the recognition that he deserves. He's a bigger back. He's 6'2", 220 pounds. They know he's going to just really pound on this defense. And if Oregon wins this game, they win it because they're going to force Oregon State to throw the football and get them into situations where it's 2nd and long, 3rd and long, and make DJU have to throw the football consistently. And Oregon feels like they've got an advantage when they play their receivers against Oregon's cornerbacks. They've got a size advantage of that matchup. The Beavers don't start any receiver over 6 foot. Oregon's receivers or cornerbacks are all over 6 foot in this game. They feel like they can kind of blanket coverage that offensive passing attack. But if Oregon can't get OSU out of the run game, it could be another game where Oregon State's in it to the very end and have an opportunity to win.
The odds makers have Oregon a 2-possession favorite. So, Angie, what is your key to getting a win here?
The key is really going to come down to DJ Uiagalelei. we talk about the run game, but like as Matt said, this is going to be a game that Oregon is going to try to force Oregon State to go through the air. And while DJU has been a big improvement from Oregon State last year at quarterback, his critics will say that his completion percentage isn't that great. It's about 57%, but when you factor in the drops, the passing targets that were actually dropped, he's at 67.6. So he needs the receivers to step up, but he too has to make some good decisions. Against Washington, we saw him maybe hold onto the ball a little too long, but when he's on, like he was against Stanford, he's on, and he'll be a pretty big X factor for this team. Like I said, if he's able to make the passes. Matt brings up a good point with the DBs, but that's where I see Jack Velling, the tight end, being a really important piece for DJU to succeed.
Yeah, for Oregon, it's going to be the hot start. It's going to be a game plan that's very similar to what they did against Utah a couple weeks ago. Force Oregon State to get out of their norm, their comfortability of running the football. If Oregon can get out to a lead, push it to 2 scores even, and force Oregon State to throw the football consistently, that's just going to get them away from what they're most comfortable with. And DJ's scrambling ability has to be accounted for. But Damian Martinez, you need to get the ball out of his hands and force Oregon State to try and push the football downfield. If they can do that, it's going to be advantageous for this Oregon defense to make plays, possibly get some turnovers. So it's probably going to be for Oregon in best interest to get out to a hot start, build an early lead.
All right, Angie and Matt, thanks so much. For more on the game, check out Duck Territory and BeaverBlitz.com. They got you covered with all of your Oregon and Oregon State football and recruiting news all year long.
Oregon State at Oregon, 8:30 Eastern on Fox, Autzen Stadium. Very crucial here now. This is a Friday game. So don't wait till Saturday and say, okay, well that Oregon State's not till the next day. No, it's a Friday game. So get the leftovers out, a little bit of apple pie, whatever you got to do to get ready for this game. Make sure we're dialed in on a Friday. Also worth noting, I said savor that whole SEC on CBS jingle that we were getting. Similar thought here. This is the last one for a minute. This is the last one for the foreseeable future with Oregon State and Oregon. Classic rivalry. This is the one part that you kind of hate about conference realignment. And for Oregon, like they're headed to the Big Ten next year, but I mean, they want to win the Pac-12 this year. Pac-12 title hopes are intact. College football playoff hopes are intact. But you got to get past your rival, who's playing some really good football right now. Played Washington to a 2-point loss last week if you want to get there. And if you're Oregon, this is what you signed up for. This is what you signed up for. If I told you, hey, we're going into the last game of the regular season, you're playing Oregon State, you got 1 loss, Pac-12 title, still on the table, college football playoff, still on the table. You take it in a heartbeat. You would take it in a heartbeat. I think this is a chance now for them to, cement their case for the college football playoff outside of that Pac-12 title game, like how they look against the common opponent with Oregon State just playing with Oregon State just playing Washington last week. Just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on how that looks for the committee going forward here. Now for Oregon State, this is just the ultimate spoiler kind of spot for them. Ultimate spoiler. Like the last time they're going to play, potentially, it's in Eugene, so it's at their place. Your conference future, if you're Oregon State, it's uncertain. By the way, Oregon, they kind of helped propel all this madness here as they're leaving to the Big Ten next year. Like, if you can knock them out of the college football playoff, hand them their second loss if you're Oregon State. Like, how sweet would that be? This is potentially the greatest spoiler spot for the Beavs that you could ask for. You got a chance to get it done. So some non-negotiables. Spread is 13.5 favoring Oregon. For Oregon State, I need some explosives. Whatever that looks like. Whether it's play action, whether it's DJ Uiagalelei making plays with his legs like he did last week against Washington really effectively, need some explosiveness. I don't think this is a game where you can totally just go 3 yards in a cloud of dust all the way down the field. Not just because Oregon's good on the defensive line, we'll talk about that, but I think by nature of how Oregon's going to require you to score points, need some explosives. Silas Bolden, I think this is a game for him again. We talked about it last week against Washington. I think you need 7 to step up for you again this week. Silas Bolden, of course, kind of the Swiss Army knife. They do a lot with him, getting him out in the perimeter, throwing the ball to him in the slot. Like, he is a weapon for them, and he has to step up big. How long does it take for Bo Nix to get into rhythm? And the matchup to watch is going to dictate this. Oregon State on the perimeter of their defense, they like to mix it up now. Like Rome Odunze, one of the best in the country. Some people would say should win the Blitnikoff Award for the best receiver in the country. They were pretty physical on the outside with him, and I think that was exactly what they needed to do. But that's crucial now in this game because that's how Oregon likes to get rolling, is by attacking the perimeter. Whether it's the jet sweeps on the outside, whether it's the outside zone, whether it's the quick game out there to Troy Franklin, like they're going to try and get your defense stretched out so they can start going north and south. So what I want to say is if they don't get rolling on the perimeter and they look back to the interior, well, then you play into the strength of your defense if you're Oregon State, because they are top 20 in the country in terms of yards allowed rushing per a game, just a little bit over 100. That would keep this game in a wrestling match kind of spot. Because if they get on the perimeter and they start scoring and it's, a game you got to play in the 30s or in the 40s, that favors Oregon. That's an MMA fight where you're just trading punches, trading kicks. If it's a wrestling match, it's field position. It's a punt off. It's, okay, can you go 80 yards instead of having to go back and forth and match score? So that would be crucial for Oregon State and obviously have a very big impact on the game. Now, right along with that, what are the situations that you put DJ Uiagalelei in? What do you ask of that offense? Because Oregon State, they're a downhill rushing attack. That's who they want to be. I talk about them like they're, the Stanford of old or the Utah of the last couple of seasons. They want to control the line of scrimmage, and they want to play that way. Now, Oregon, their defensive line is one of the best in the country. They're allowing less than 100 yards rushing. I believe they're number 8 in the country, allowing right around 91 yards on the ground a game. They're very good. So what it comes down to in my mind is how many 3rd and 7s do you put Oregon State in? Because the more 3rd and 7 plus you have to play, the greater advantage for Oregon. And we saw that last week against Washington. I would also say, right in line with that, the success on the ground for Oregon State, they do a lot on play action. So they have a better chance, clearly, of hitting those explosive plays and getting the ball to Silas Bolden in the flat and being able to hit the tight end down the seam off of play action than if they have to play straight up and go 3rd and 7 and just say, okay, we gotta go our guys versus your guys. I don't think the skill players for Oregon State favor that matchup. Now, DJU, I think he should put a lot of respect on his name based on what he's done to this point in the year. I think he's a much better quarterback than people wanted to give him credit for based on his Clemson days. He's been spinning it this year. But I don't know that his guys can separate consistently enough in 3rd and 7 to beat Oregon in that spot. Now, if they can pound the rock and you live in 3rd and 2, advantage Oregon State. Take the air out of the game. Make Bo Nix watch. Kind of the same approach you had last week against Washington is the same approach this week against Oregon. You try and limit the possessions that Oregon's going to get. A lot of that comes with how you run the football against Oregon, because the tempo of this game is huge. And the way that I think about this, if both these teams are cars, I think Oregon State is something like a Hummer. Physical, going to try and just kind of off-road with you, control the game, durable, slow and steady. That's kind of who they are. They don't have a ton of extra gear to them, but they as a Hummer, they can just roll on you and go off-road, and that could be how they roll. It could be how they win the game. For Oregon, I think they're probably a little bit more like a Range Rover of sorts, not necessarily like a Ferrari where they're just going to go a million miles an hour, but they can also kind of go off-road a little bit. They can also go on the highway. They got a little bit of extra gear to them. So when I look at this game, I think there's more races that Oregon can win with that Range Rover than Oregon State can with their Hummer. Now, if it becomes an off-road mountain race of we're going to run the football, like I said, field position, if it becomes that kind of game, I'll take the Hummer. But I think Oregon's going to be able to force it into a game where you have to match them offensively. You got to kind of have a little bit extra gear, a little bit more speed, and I think that game favors Oregon. So, with the multiple ways that I think Oregon can win, I think Oregon wins this game. I think it's close. I think it's 33-24 Ducks, and they're headed to that Pac-12 title game more than likely, headed to the college football playoff if they can beat Washington. But this is a massive, massive game for all that Oregon wants to accomplish if they can beat their rival. So expect a ton of emotion, expect a ton of juice from both sides, expect a little bit of chippiness here from both sides just because it's rivalry weekend, and this is the last time we're going to see these teams for the foreseeable future. It'll be a good one. Dial in, but again, we got the Ducks getting it done. I would not touch the spread. It's a Friday. Make sure you're locked and loaded. As we moved out of summer season with the shorts, that's great. Bird Dogs took care of us all summer long. You say, okay, well, we're going into the winter now, JD, in the fall, like kind of cozy, crispy season, so we probably got to hang the Bird Dogs up, right? No. Not necessarily. Bird Dogs, they have a tremendous fitting pant for you that's going to, one, just look good, and that's crucial. Like, you got to look good, feel good, work good, play good. That's important. It's first off. Second off, extremely comfortable. I said feel good right after look good because that's extremely important. When you're doing the 8 to 5 every single day, you want something you can wear to the office and not feel like you're walking in some cardboard pants. It's not Bird Dogs. Great stretching material. You could wear it to the office, and you could go work out in it afterwards if you're really on a time crunch. I wouldn't recommend it because you would look like a crazy person working out in khakis, but you could do it if you want to. So redeem code JD at checkout at birddogs.com and get you a nice little Yeti-style cooler. Great here as we finish up with the college football regular season, bowl season now. A lot of crispy tailgates, going to want a hot beverage to put in that thing. So make sure you use code JD at checkout, and they will take care of you. So we appreciate Bird Dogs bringing all the hard count. Again, code JD. Get some Bird Dogs. You won't want to take them off. Promise. Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of the hard count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel. Hey, let's give thanks for another rivalry weekend about to be upon us here. What's it going to take to win a national championship? The college football playoff rankings once again came out last night. If you got in here and hung out with us as we did our live rankings reaction, we appreciate y'all being there. Gave you our thoughts on the rankings. I don't think there's too much to unpack within those, but what's it going to take to win a national title? We'll talk about that and a lot of other things on this beautiful Big Picture Wednesday. It is November 22nd, 2023, the last one in history, so I'm begging you, let's make it the greatest one ever. Let's make it the greatest one this earth has ever seen. We're going to do that right now by talking some college football. Got a ton to unpack. As I mentioned, what's it going to take to win a natty? We'll talk about that for some of these top contenders. Also, going to jump into a little bit of the scenario season, if you will. Every single week, we've made a tradition now on this Wednesday show to go to the Twitter sphere or the X sphere, whatever you want to call it right now, and hear from y'all and say, okay, what do we think could happen here? Heck, what are some scenarios that you want to talk about that we think the committee maybe would act in accordance with? What would they do if we get a 2-loss champ from this conference, or if Bama beats Georgia as a 1-loss SEC champ, or Texas loses again? Like, there's so many scenarios. Got a lot of great ones from y'all, again, on my Twitter page, at Jody Pickell. Follow me there if you're not already. Got a lot of scenarios from y'all. We'll unpack those here in just a few short minutes. We appreciate y'all adding into that. We prefaced this show telling you, hey, it's rivalry weekend. There is a lot of Thanksgiving in the air. There's also quite a bit of hatred in the air. I think rivalry is probably another form of love, but there's also some hate baked in there. What's the aftermath going to be of the game? Like Michigan, Ohio State, there has been more off-field storylines than I think any other game that I can remember in the modern college football era. What is the potential aftermath for either outcome? So if Ohio State wins, what are people going to say? If Michigan wins, what are people going to say? I think the aftermath there, I want to make sure we get a little bit ahead of it because there's going to be some overreactions, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page in guarding against that. Also, the Pulse the Program series rolling right along. We're going to make a stop this week in Athens, Georgia, and take a look at what's going on with the back-to-back national champs. If y'all saw that cinematic recap that creative team at Georgia put out, dude, it was a movie. So good. If you haven't watched that, would recommend you go check that out after you watch the show, of course. But gave us a little interesting peek into, I think, the internal feel at Georgia. So we'll give you our pulse as best we can tell there. Glad you're here. Very, very happy to have you a part of this show right now. Quick scheduling note. A lot of shows will be off the air tomorrow. We are not one of them. Okay, we will have a show for you tomorrow, Thanksgiving morning, same time, same place. We'll premiere it. It'll be on this YouTube channel, 11 a.m. Eastern. It'll be in your podcast feed, all that. So just letting you know, this is not canceled. This is not stopping. We are keeping on. College football is the greatest thing ever. We only have so many weeks of it, so that means we only get so many shows in season. We're not going to take a bye week or a bye show with Thanksgiving. So, in fact, we're actually going to turn the volume up a little bit on that show. Got Andy Staples on the show, got Jake Olson on the show, the USC alum who's the first Division I blind football player who long snapped for USC, a friend of ours who's on the show. So make sure you're dialed in for that. We'll have our thoughts there, and we'll have a good time. Hey, before we get started here, We got a new individual in the producer chair today. Man, the myth, the legend, Trey Anity. Trey, how you feeling, baby? I want to give you a chance to say what's up to the people. I appreciate you stepping in here and pinch hitting as Nick Brake is just in high demand these days, as a man of his stature is. What's going on, baby? How we feeling?
I'm feeling great, JD. Thank you for having me on the program here. This is not the debut, but this is one of the first times we've got to get on and chalk it up. So I'm excited, man. I'm thankful for, some more good football, like you said, rivalry weekend again this week. And, ultimately, JD, I think I'm just thankful for another poll. We're going to talk about what are you thankful for this Thanksgiving week?
Man, I'm thankful. I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for the entire team here, from yourself to Nick Brake to everyone up in the office that makes this show happen. I'm also thankful for everybody that watches this show. And that sounds a little bit cliche, but like genuinely, I mean, you and I have a fair amount of windshield time together as we're going from here to Columbus and here to Tuscaloosa, here to Knoxville. And so we've been on the road together a fair amount. And just the fact that we get to do this, and we have this conversation a fair amount, we get to do this, and then at the end of the week a paycheck hits, like that in itself is the greatest heist of all time. So I'm extremely thankful for that, and thankful that we get to do it together, brother. So it's a good deal all around. Thanksgiving plans. Before we get rolling here, Thanksgiving plans, you got any big ones?
I'm going to be actually headed back to the Palmetto State of South Carolina.
Okay.
We'll be going to the Palmetto Bowl, the rivalry game between Clemson and South Carolina on Saturday, I believe.
Boom.
But, gonna go see the family, do all that. Hopefully I can find the passion of a guy like Connor Stallions this weekend as, we watch some good Thanksgiving football as we have another program show for you tomorrow, like you said there as well. But, man, going back to see what you got going on, JD.
You know what? We'll be in Atlanta. A little bit of Thanksgiving with the family. Sister just got married, so first Thanksgiving with her now husband. Be a good time. So yeah, man, be a lot of ball to watch, but excited to jump into it, man. So Trey, appreciate you producing the show, brother, and we'll check back in with you here at the end of this deal. So y'all get your question and answers, or get your questions into Trey Anity, and we'll have some answers for you at the end of the show. Trey, you the man, brother. Let's have a great one.
Yes, sir, JD, you were the man. And let's get into it. Let's
get right to it.
Get some CFP talk going.
Let's get right to it, baby. As Trey just mentioned, college football playoff rankings came out yet again last night. We already kind of reacted to them, but it sort of got me thinking a little bit here. With the way that this top six is situated, we can have a conversation around their path to the playoff, and I think it's all very fair to talk about, if Oregon wins out, do they get in? I think they do. If Washington wins out, do they get in? I think they do. I think that's kind of a conversation we've had for a while now, though. The way that I'm looking at this, all six of these teams control their own destiny. So here's the big question I want to ask here. What's it going to take to win a national title? Forget just getting to the dance. Forget being fourth in inches. I'm trying to go the distance, to quote Aubrey Graham. What's it going to take to win a national title? I want to go through these six teams here right now. First and foremost, though, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. As you can tell, we talk college football every single day. You love ball. We love ball. We talk about it because it's our job and we love it. So we're glad to have you here. So no extra additives, no high fructose corn syrup, as we say here a lot. It's ball and only ball. So make sure you're subscribed, and we appreciate y'all being a part of this. So the committee has Oregon at 6. We've talked about why they're at 6. We don't need to unpack that too much. They're a top 4 caliber team. If they handle business and win out, they will be in the playoff. But how does Oregon win a national title? I think Oregon wins a national championship if they are as good as advertised. Because what I think that means is what we've seen from them on the line of scrimmage has been nothing short of phenomenal. They're top 5 in the country in terms of yards per carry on offense. They're top 10 in the country in terms of yards allowed on the ground per game. And what it's going to take for Oregon to win a national championship, more than likely, means you got to go through a line of scrimmage team like a Georgia, like a Michigan, like an Ohio State. And so I think they have the chops to do that. And we've seen it multiple times where they've looked phenomenal on the line of scrimmage against teams like a Utah. Heck, they looked great on the line of scrimmage against a team like Washington, even though they lost that game. But the question is, how do they stack up when they play one of those elite line of scrimmage teams? I think we've seen them be tremendous. We've seen them be advertised as tremendous, but will they be as good as advertised? That's the big question. Because from where I'm sitting, the way they're advertised is a Big Ten football team in the trenches. I don't think that's false advertising, just so we're clear. And then you have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Bo Nix, who may end up winning the Heisman Trophy. So for them, just be as good as advertised. I think that's how Oregon gets it done. My worry for them now, when it comes to what could keep it from a college football national championship in that playoff, how does their secondary match up if they run into Washington yet again? Now, we'll probably see that when it comes to the Pac-12 championship game, so maybe this is sort of a moot point as a whole. But the secondary playing one of those elite perimeter teams, if they ran into Ohio State and had to play Marvin Harrison Jr. or Rome Odunze yet again in that Pac-12 title spot, I wonder how Oregon would be able to shape up in that sense. Not that they're bad by any stretch, but just you have to be elite in every facet to win a national title, in my opinion at least, or in most facets to win a national title. That's my question mark for Oregon. Now, number 5, you got Florida State. And, I mean, the whole ranking with them is, I think it's fair. I don't think we're dropping them because of Jordan Travis being hurt. Like we said last night, I think Washington and their eye test and their resume now put them ahead of Florida State. So Florida State, handle business, you're in the dance. Florida State wins a national championship if they can bottle up a little bit of that 2014 Ohio State juice. Because remember, that was a team where it wasn't just the backup quarterback. You went to the backup quarterback in Cardale Jones, 12 gauge himself, and they just had a magical run. And, I mean, he ended up just being the greatest, most pleasant surprise in Ohio State Buckeye history, being the man at quarterback. So, obviously now, Florida State going from Jordan Travis to Tate Rodemaker. He's thrust into action with the injury of their guy, Jordan Travis. Need to be able to not just be serviceable, but be like Cardale Jones good. Now, I'm not saying you have to play the same kind of style Cardale Jones played where you're running around and throwing your body into people, but I am saying the offense has to stay at the same level, if not elevate from where they are right now. Now, a big part of that run for Ohio State, yes, Cardale Jones came in and got buckets. That's all true. But I think the potentially more important part of this for Florida State is Trey Benson, their running back, has to be what Zeke Elliott was to that Ohio State offense. Because remember, I mean, Zeke had like a historic run in that playoff. From the Alabama game to the Oregon game, I believe he was over 200 yards. I want to say in both games, but definitely.
All right, chat. I will be back on. I'll be back on this channel too, but the game will be on my Twitch. I'll be probably about 2 hours, 15 minutes.
That mode to make them dangerous. Because the question, or I guess the worry, would be the inconsistency we've seen at times from Florida State. The response mechanism